They called it the honeymoon of the century, a floating palace gliding across the Mediterranean with the world's richest man at its helm. But behind the champagne toasts and designer gowns, questions were rising like waves. Was this really about love? Or was it about legacy, image, and control? Why did the yacht feel less like a retreat and more like a stage? With cameras catching every glance, they say some weddings are made for love and others are made for history. But when it comes to Jeff Bezos and Lauren Sánchez, their wedding has become both. The billionaire founder of Amazon and his television host-turned-philanthropist wife have captured the world's attention not only because of who they are, but because of the scale, the spectacle, and the endless stories surrounding their union. But the ceremony was just the beginning. What followed was something that feels more like a blockbuster film than a newlywed getaway. A honeymoon staged on a yacht so massive, so luxurious, and so controversial that even Hollywood stars are whispering about it. Imagine this: a vessel the size of a small cruise ship, complete with decks stretching wider than a football field, interiors dripping in custom design, and a price tag that makes ordinary billionaires look like budget travelers. This was not a typical honeymoon retreat. It was an announcement, a display, and some might even say, a calculated message to the world. Was it about romance? Or was it about branding? Was it about two people celebrating their union? Or was it about reshaping their image on a global stage? For Bezos and Sanchez, their yacht honeymoon has become a story that goes far beyond love. It has become a case study in how the world views wealth, power, and celebrity in the age of social media. Every photo released, every guest spotted, every moment that leaked online was not just gossip. It was a signal, an invitation for the public to debate whether this was the ultimate fairy tale or a masterclass in public relations gone wrong. Now, let's set the stage. Venice, Italy, had already been turned upside down by their wedding, a celebration so extravagant that locals complained their city was being treated like a private playground. When the couple sailed away for their honeymoon, the whispers only grew louder. The yacht wasn't just a yacht, it was a floating palace, a fortress, a spectacle that carried with it not only the bride and groom, but the weight of every headline, every critic, and every fan who couldn't look away. The world's richest man and his new wife were suddenly no longer just honeymooners. They were symbols. And symbols, as history has shown, are often scrutinized more than celebrated. As the cameras zoomed in, two questions began to dominate the conversation. Was this yacht honeymoon the height of romance? A rare glimpse of genuine happiness in the lives of two very public figures? Or was it a carefully staged performance, a luxurious distraction designed to shift the narrative and polish reputations that had been questioned, criticized, and sometimes ridiculed? This is where our story begins. Not simply on the open waters of the Mediterranean, but in the court of public opinion, where billionaires, celebrities, and everyday people collide in a debate about excess, image, and influence. The world had barely caught its breath after the Venetian wedding spectacle, before Jeff Bezos and Lauren Sánchez made headlines again. This time, it wasn't about historic venues or lavish gowns. It was about something far bigger, both in scale and symbolism. A yacht so colossal it seemed to belong not on the sea but in a movie. To understand the fascination with this so-called honeymoon yacht, we have to step back and look at the cultural moment we are in. Billionaire weddings are not new. Royal weddings are not new. Even celebrity destination weddings are not new. But a billionaire wedding followed by a honeymoon that looked more like a global press tour. That was something different, something unique. Something that begged for attention, critique, and endless analysis. The yacht in question wasn't merely transportation. It was a stage, a floating arena where love, wealth, and image collided under the bright lights of paparazzi cameras. From drone shots above the Mediterranean to grainy telephoto lenses capturing champagne toasts on deck, every detail felt magnified. The question wasn't just where are they going, it was what message are they trying to send. For Jeff Bezos, a man whose image has been built on innovation, efficiency, and an empire that reshaped global shopping habits, the honeymoon was always going to be about more than personal happiness. After all, he is no stranger to public criticism. Whether it's questions about Amazon's workplace culture, environmental footprints, or his personal life, Bezos has often been at the center of debates that go far beyond business. By contrast, Lauren Sánchez has lived a different kind of life in the spotlight. A broadcaster, a journalist, a pilot, and now a philanthropist, she has carried her own share of scrutiny, from her professional career to her relationships, and ultimately, her engagement to one of the world's wealthiest men. When these two worlds collided on the deck of a yacht worth hundreds of millions of dollars, it wasn't just a honeymoon. It was a narrative reset. At least that's how it looked to some. Often described as a floating palace, Bezos' yacht has been one of the most discussed luxury builds of the decade. Its sheer scale has sparked fascination and outrage in equal measure. We're not just talking about a boat with a few bedrooms and a deck for sunbathing. We're talking about a vessel longer than some skyscrapers are tall, a ship designed with multiple decks, pools, lounges, gyms, and even support vessels that trail behind like servants in a royal court. Reports suggest the interiors are not simply luxurious, they are customized to fit Bezos and Sanchez's exact tastes. Fine woodwork, cutting-edge technology, art collections, and privacy features that rival the security of presidential retreats. In other words, this isn't a yacht you charter. This isn't even a yacht you buy off the market. This is a yacht you commission when you're trying to redefine what luxury means. And so, when the newlyweds stepped aboard, the world couldn't help but take notice. To some, it was a fairy tale. To others, it was tone-deaf extravagance. To the media, it was a headline goldmine. The media loves symbols, and nothing says new chapter like a honeymoon. Traditionally, honeymoons are private, intimate, even secretive. Celebrities often escape to remote islands or secluded villas, hoping to disappear from the public gaze. But Bezos and Sanchez, their honeymoon was the opposite. It wasn't hidden, it wasn't quiet. Instead, it unfolded in plain view, inviting commentary from every angle. Tabloids splashed photos of the couple lounging on deck, sipping champagne, embracing, or laughing with guests. Lifestyle magazines dissected Lauren's wardrobe choices, from resort dresses to designer sunglasses. Business outlets discussed the economics of the yacht itself, calculating operating costs, crew salaries, and fuel expenses that could rival a small nation's budget. Meanwhile, critics pointed to the environmental impact of such a massive vessel. It became a conversation that stretched across genres. Was this love or a marketing strategy? Was this celebration or self-promotion? The honeymoon wasn't just a trip, it was a spectacle being consumed in real time, with commentary ranging from admiration to disdain. Every era has its symbols of wealth. The Gilded Age had mansions in Newport. The 1980s had Wall Street penthouses. Today, in the age of billionaires and influencers, it's super yachts. They are not just about travel, they are about dominance, about visibility, about showing not only what you can buy, but what you can create. For Bezos, whose public image often oscillates between genius entrepreneur and ruthless tycoon, the yacht represented both triumph and vulnerability. On one hand, it showed the fruits of unimaginable success. On the other, it placed him squarely in the center of the wealth debate that defines our cultural moment. The symbolism didn't stop at the vessel itself. The timing mattered too. Coming so soon after a wedding that already generated global buzz, the yacht honeymoon seemed like a second act in a carefully choreographed performance. It suggested continuity, it suggested permanence, and to critics, it suggested vanity. But here's where it gets complicated. Symbols cut both ways. The same gesture that inspires awe in some can inspire outrage in others. And that, perhaps more than the yacht itself, is why this honeymoon became such a talking point. The reaction online was swift, polarized, and deeply telling of how the world processes wealth today. On one side, there were those who admired the spectacle, fans who saw the honeymoon as a modern-day fairy tale, proof that love and luxury could intertwine at the highest levels. For these observers, the yacht was a dream come true, an aspirational image that belonged on glossy magazine covers. On the other side, critics saw something entirely different. They saw excess in a time of economic uncertainty. They saw environmental irresponsibility in a time of climate crisis. They saw a calculated PR move designed to shift focus away from deeper, more uncomfortable stories. For them, the yacht was not a symbol of love, but a distraction, a glittering showpiece that masked uncomfortable truths. The truth, as always, probably lies somewhere in between. The honeymoon was likely both a personal celebration and a public statement, both a genuine moment of happiness and a carefully managed performance. That's the paradox of being Jeff Bezos and Lauren Sánchez in the 21st century. Nothing is ever just personal. Everything is spectacle. Everything is message. As the days of the honeymoon unfolded, what became clear was that this was not just a voyage on water, it was a voyage through public perception. The more the couple appeared on deck, smiling and laughing, the more photographers clicked and audiences debated. Some praised them for not hiding, for embracing the spotlight in a moment that could have been kept behind closed doors. Others wondered if that visibility was intentional, a way of saying to the world, we are not ashamed of our wealth, our choices, or the magnitude of this union. And yet for every admirer, there seemed to be a critic waiting in the wings, ready to frame the spectacle as out of touch with the times. The backlash began with whispers online and soon escalated into broader conversations. Social media became a battlefield where images of the yacht were juxtaposed with headlines about inflation, layoffs, and the climate crisis. Commentators questioned whether this kind of indulgence was even appropriate anymore, arguing that the age of unchecked glamour was over and that the world demanded humility from its wealthiest figures. For many, the honeymoon was not a romantic getaway, but a symbol of the imbalance between billionaires and everyone else. The criticism was not limited to casual voices online either. Analysts and columnists weighed in, some calling the yacht an unavoidable lightning rod for criticism, while others suggested Bezos was deliberately leaning into the role of the untouchable mogul. It was spectacle as strategy, the idea that the louder the show, the more it drowns out subtler stories. But to understand why this narrative struck such a nerve, we need to look at Hollywood's own history with grand honeymoons and displays of love. In earlier decades, stars like Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton turned their romances into public theater, dazzling fans with jewels, yachts, and private islands. Their love affairs were not only personal, but cultural events, staged across magazine covers and whispered about in cocktail lounges. Bezos and Sanchez seem to be following a similar script, except their production was bigger, glossier, and amplified by the 24-hour news cycle. The difference, of course, is scale. Where Burton and Taylor could shock with diamonds, Bezos and Sanchez wielded an entire ship as their prop. And in a world where every action is scrutinized and every display is instantly viral, the symbolism could not be ignored. Yet for all the criticism, there was another layer of fascination that cannot be dismissed. People were watching, and they could not look away. News outlets tracked the yacht's course as though it were a royal procession. Tabloids ran speculative pieces about which celebrities might be invited aboard, fueling endless chatter about whether the honeymoon doubled as a networking event. Every new set of photographs, from Bezos in casual polo shirts to Sanchez in designer gowns, sparked fresh waves of commentary. The couple had become a narrative that unfolded in chapters, and the yacht was their stage set against the endless backdrop of the Mediterranean Sea. Some insiders suggested that the honeymoon was also about rebranding. Bezos, long seen as a sharp, calculated businessman, was now trying to present himself as more relaxed, more human, more open to love and joy. Sanchez, often painted by critics as ambitious or opportunistic, was reframed as a partner who brought lightness and adventure to the billionaire's life. Together, their laughter, their embraces, their very public presence seemed to say that they were more than headlines and speculation. They were simply in love. Whether audiences believed it or not, that softer image played into the narrative they wanted to project. Still, even the best-managed images cannot escape unintended consequences. Environmental groups quickly pointed out the carbon footprint of super yachts, noting that vessels of this size consume fuel at levels unimaginable to most people. Commentators noted the contradiction between Bezos' investments in space exploration and sustainability initiatives and the reality of honeymooning on one of the world's largest private ships. The criticism was sharp, but it was also predictable. Every grand gesture from the ultra-wealthy now faces the question of responsibility. Can you celebrate without excess? Can you display love without spectacle? And in this case, can you show the world your new life without amplifying every criticism that already surrounds your name? The couple, of course, did not publicly respond to these critiques. They didn't need to. Their images, their appearances, their very visibility spoke louder than words. Some saw that silence as arrogance, others as wisdom. After all, when you are living on a yacht larger than a football field, every photograph is already a statement. And perhaps that was the point. Hollywood itself has always thrived on the paradox of excess. Audiences criticize stars for their extravagance while simultaneously devouring every detail. Bezos and Sanchez were not inventing this dynamic, they were simply embodying it on a larger stage than anyone else had before. For decades, tabloids have survived on this contradiction, selling outrage and envy in the same headline. The honeymoon became a perfect example of that formula. Even so, there were signs that this trip was more than indulgence. Sources close to the couple suggested that business meetings and private gatherings with high-profile guests were taking place aboard. That possibility turned the honeymoon into something more complex, a blending of pleasure and strategy, love and empire. If true, the yacht was not just a stage, but also a boardroom, a place where deals could be whispered over champagne as cameras clicked from afar. That dual purpose is what fascinated many observers. The idea that the world's richest man could never truly step away from his empire, that even his honeymoon could double as a networking opportunity, made the spectacle even more intriguing. And yet, through all the speculation, the couple seemed at ease. Their body language was relaxed, their expressions unguarded, their laughter genuine. Perhaps that was the most confusing detail of all. Were they acting, or were they truly living in the moment? Were we witnessing a carefully staged image campaign, or were we intruding on authentic joy? The truth may be both. And that is the challenge of being Jeff Bezos and Lauren Sánchez in this cultural climate. Every gesture is both authentic and strategic, both personal and political, both celebration and brand management. The longer the yacht sailed, the more the narrative evolved. At first it was a honeymoon, then it became a statement, then it became a debate. And finally, it became something larger than itself, a reflection of the way we interpret power, money, and love in the 21st century. The story stopped being about where Bezos and Sanchez went on their honeymoon and started being about what their choices revealed about us. The viewers, the commentators, the audience that consumes and critiques in equal measure. What remains certain is that this yacht journey will be remembered not simply as a honeymoon, but as an event in itself. A piece of cultural theater that revealed as much about society's obsession with wealth as it did about the couple's love. For some, it was the ultimate fairy tale. For others, a PR disaster. But for everyone, it was unforgettable. Jeff Bezos and Lauren Sanchez's yacht honeymoon was never just a private getaway. The longer it sailed through the Mediterranean, the clearer it became that the trip had transformed into a global spectacle. What might have been a simple honeymoon for any other couple turned into a cultural event, one that divided opinion, inspired debate, and captured headlines worldwide. For admirers, the voyage was aspirational, even romantic. They saw it as the fairy tale chapter of two people who had worked hard, achieved extraordinary success, and were now celebrating their love in the grandest way possible. The yacht to them was not arrogance, but triumph, a symbol of ambition rewarded. It showed that even in circles of unimaginable wealth, love could still find a place to shine. But for critics, the yacht was something else entirely, a stage rather than a sanctuary. To them, every embrace, every designer dress, and every glass of champagne was part of a carefully choreographed performance designed to manage perception and dominate headlines. In this view, the honeymoon wasn't about intimacy at all. It was about image, about rebranding Bezos and Sanchez as a modern power couple whose presence demanded constant attention. This tension between fairy tale and theater was what made the spectacle so fascinating. Like a Hollywood production, the yacht honeymoon had everything: glamour, suspense, whispers of tension, and endless reviews. The Mediterranean became their red carpet, paparazzi became their audience, and the world itself became their critic. At the same time, deeper questions began to surface. Environmental activists highlighted the enormous ecological footprint of such super yachts. Economists compared its operating costs to the budgets of small towns. Ordinary people, struggling with rising prices and economic pressures, asked whether a honeymoon needed to be this extravagant at all. These criticisms struck a nerve because they connected the yacht to larger social anxieties about wealth, inequality, and the distance between billionaires and the everyday lives of those who made their fortunes possible. Even so, fascination never waned. Guests came and went, adding layers of intrigue to the voyage. Photographers captured fleeting moments, some joyful, others strained, that tabloids spun into storylines of drama and discord. Supporters admired Lauren Sanchez's poise and confidence, while critics painted her as the symbol of excess. Bezos, in turn, tried to balance casual charm with the unavoidable aura of staggering wealth, his every gesture read as both intimate and strategic. By leaning into visibility, Bezos and Sanchez ensured one thing above all: people kept watching. Whether out of admiration, envy, or criticism, the world could not look away. And that was the real power of the spectacle. It wasn't just about love, it was about legacy. Powerful figures know that history remembers images more than statistics. Presidents are remembered by iconic photographs, celebrities by unforgettable moments. For Bezos and Sanchez, the yacht honeymoon became their bid for cultural permanence, ensuring their love story would be remembered as more than just another billionaire headline. In the end, the question remains, was this truly a honeymoon of two people in love? Or was it a Hollywood-style stage play on water? The truth may lie somewhere in between. Perhaps it was both. Love wrapped in luxury, intimacy packaged for public consumption, a private escape that could never truly be private because the whole world was watching. What's certain is that this journey became a mirror of how we consume stories of wealth and fame, how we judge, admire, and criticize those who live lives so far removed from our own. For Bezos, the man who built an empire on control, this was one story he couldn't fully script. For Lauren, often defined by others' narratives, it was proof that every smile and every glance would always be debated. And for us, the audience, it was a reminder that when it comes to billionaires, nothing is ever just personal. Every move is a statement. Every image becomes history. And as long as we keep watching, the show will never end. At the end of the day, Hollywood isn't just about glamour and red carpets. It's about power, secrets, and the scandals that often stay hidden until the truth forces its way into the spotlight. Whether it's courtroom drama, relationship, chaos, or behind-the-scenes deals, one thing is certain: the story never ends here, and as always, we'll be watching, digging, and uncovering the pieces others try to keep buried.